Welcome to the Love, Law, and Life Makeover Podcast, a go-to for hope, faith, and joy in changing your life. I'm Neil Presley Cox, lawyer, speaker, and author of Hope Lines. I have an easy-to-find website, neilpresleycox.com. You can't miss it. And a nice welcome for my presenter and co-host, Kelsy Gibbs.
Okay, so we are here with Neil Presley Cox doing our podcast with Hope Lines. We're going chapter by chapter through Hope Lines, covering the 18 stories of families in trouble and help they need in spirit, sense, and law. And today's chapter is about the first high, where addiction starts. Neil, do you want to kind of go over this chapter a little bit?
The first high, it's a little bit allegorical because although the story talks about energy drinks, the message behind this story is that from the time that they are born, our children watch us and imitate us, and human beings have a desire to alter their consciousness. It's something that is just part of human nature. We want to alter our consciousness, and we want to do it in a way that feels good. And so this is an allegory about children and how they begin learning to alter their consciousness and to feel good. And they do this, one of the ways, of course, is with energy drinks. It gives you a pick-me-up or a boost, or a can contains something inside of it that makes you feel good. And so what are you learning at a very early age when you figure out that something that's in a container makes you feel good? Well, obviously, down the road, the containers switch from energy drinks to alcohol and perhaps other things. But that is the message, is that kids decide at an early age that they can grab a hold of things that will make them feel better and potentially even in their own mind solve their problems. So that was the message of this story, is a cautionary tale, and just the awareness that what I do affects the people in my life, and most notably affects people that are impressionable, i.e. children.
And I was kind of hoping you would go over maybe some of your own personal experience that you've seen with, that first addiction, whether that is like caffeine or vaping or cigarettes or whatever it is ends up being.
One of the things that I remember from my childhood is how much fun it was to twirl around until I was dizzy, or how much fun it was to ride a ride that would make me feel dizzy. And I think at an early age, perhaps in the preteen years, we come to realize that that feeling of dizziness makes fear and anxiety go away. So if we're stressed, twirling around for a brief moment makes you feel not stressed, makes you feel like you're just living in a whirligig feeling. And so I think that that is sort of the origin of realizing that there are ways to make stress and anxiety go away and make negativity go away, or at least give us the illusion in our own shell, our own body, our own mind, that stress and anxiety and problems are going away. And of course, I'm alluding to substances there. So that's the early feeling. And then once you reach the teen years, I always pray and hope for every family that they aren't dealing with substance use preteen, because it's disastrous enough nowadays if it begins in the teen years. So I always hope that it isn't beginning preteen. Of course, I recognize that for many families it is. But once you discover substances, then it becomes clear that you have found a way, at least temporarily, to make yourself feel better and to not feel stressed, which of course I went down that road myself with alcohol and marijuana.
What would you say is something that I love the fact that you're talking about, like, you know, even as a little kid, we're looking, we end up finding ways, even on or rather stumble upon ways of reducing our anxiety, finding that comfort, right? Whether it's swirling around or whatever it is. What are some other techniques that you have found to be successful to use instead of going down the road of substances or whatever that might be?
This story just is, I hope it is at least, a reminder that there are teaching moments. These are teachable moments with children, that when they start to experience that altering of consciousness and realizing that you can get a hold of liquids or substances, or you can inhale something and it will make you feel better temporarily. Those are teaching moments, and parents can't always completely, um, stop the behavior, especially with teenagers. They can't always be successful in stopping the behavior, and so that their child discontinues doing that. But they can offer teachable moments. They can perhaps slow the behavior, because nowadays everything, bless you, nowadays everything is in sort of warp speed, where kids are growing up too fast and they're altering their conscious too early and too fast. So you may not be able to stop something, but you can alter the trajectory. Instead of like this, you can get them to actually age appropriately absorb and learn as they go on a little bit more of a level playing field for where they are at emotionally, where they are at cognitively, where their brains are. The 13-year-old is not equipped to use substances. Their brains aren't ready for it. And it stops the growth and development, the natural maturation process. So my hope is that these teachable moments can help people understand that they can, if not alter the behavior, it can at least alter the trajectory of the behaviors. But I don't know that I answered your question. I think I did for children, but for me, there are lots of tools that I use to address anxiety that do not involve getting intoxicated. Exercise, both weightlifting and aerobic exercise are big tools that I use. Prayer, being around other people that are doing positive things and having honest conversations with them, getting together with people that also are not using substances, recovery meetings, hiking, being out in nature, and mindfulness. So, there are lots of tools, being involved with hobbies that actually will take away anxiety. The thing is, though, those tools do not take away anxiety and stress and alter our consciousness as quickly as substances do. And that is the rub, because people nowadays know that they can alter their consciousness and make anxiety go away like that with powerful substances. And the tools that I use, they're not as fast, but they're much, much healthier and much more life affirming.
That's beautiful. Exactly. I definitely agree with that. I think it's interesting because the society that it seems like we're in right now is, hey, I want it right now. I don't want to have to wait. I don't want to have to put in that work. I want to be able to just, have whatever it is I need as quickly as possible. And it's almost like we've lost this idea of the journey of getting to where we need to be, right? Whether it's grounding, going in nature, or just even walking around in grass without your shoes on, it's just extremely therapeutic. And instead of, enjoying that moment, it's more like, hey, I want my brain just to go there. So let me go to whatever it is, right? Um, it's so funny that you talked about caffeine, especially caffeine, because I have been trying to get off of caffeine for about a year. Not very hard. I mean, I haven't been very diligent. I've been playing with the idea is what I could be saying. I'm playing with the idea of getting off of caffeine. Maybe not completely, but at least at this point, I know I'm very dependent upon it. Um, and I'm curious because I do understand in some respects, like caffeine is not necessarily bad for you, but it's like anything in the world, right? Too much of it isn't a good thing, right? So what, especially because it's so, I didn't even know we were going to go this way, Neil. So I'm just taking you down this rabbit hole with me. I'm especially like right now, caffeine is so acceptable in our society. It's so easy. Like Starbucks, like everybody has their Starbucks cup. Everybody, there's a coffee stand on every corner, sometimes like two or three in a row. Like, how important is it? I guess how do you figure out the priority of saying, okay, like I need to cut back on this, or maybe my life could be better without it? Because I think what it is I'm not seeing truly too many benefits of getting away from the caffeine, right? So when you're like, what
Let
would
me have
someone
a
like you
sip of
do?
caffeine so I can think about your point there. You know, speaking for myself, I have an extremely addictive personality. I'm highly addicted to caffeine. And when I'm into something like exercise, I am all in. And there are certain things that you get rewards for being, I'm a workaholic, and there's a lot of rewards that come from being a workaholic. There's some downside too, but it's a socially acceptable addiction. Caffeine, there's a lot of rewards that come from staying caffeinated and in high energy work mode. Unfortunately for me, with my addictive personality, I drink way too much caffeine, and in the last few years, it's very readily and apparently affecting my lower gut, my digestive system, and prostate, and things like that, and giving me pain. So uh, I can speak for myself as a person that's in addiction. I really struggle with workaholism and coffee addiction because my mind doesn't see them as bad. It sees them as necessary to do everything that I want to do today. So for me, the answer is that I'm going to have to get some outside help on this caffeine thing. Probably, dedicate some recovery 12-step type efforts to it and get an expert, a nutritionist. For somebody that doesn't have an addictive personality, it's probably, I can't imagine it's necessary to go to those kinds of extremes. If you don't have an addictive personality and you're starting to see coffee as having adverse effects on you, you can probably just simply cut back and say, okay, I'm only going to have 1.5 in the morning and 1 at 2, and I will stop. I don't have that ability. It's all or nothing for me. I'm going to drink coffee all day long, or I don't know what I'll do. But I don't have that ability to regulate. If you have that ability, then you can probably cut back, and it will not be a problem. It will continue to be a pleasure that doesn't really have much of any downside.
Hmm.
Does that help a
Yeah,
little?
that does. So at the end of the day, it's getting a grip on your own, like being aware of your own personality and what you need to do to get to where you want to be. And of
Right.
course, it's like, do I want to change this? Is this something that I feel like is actually going to benefit my life if I change?
Yeah.
Right.
In recovery, one of the huge sayings in recovery is first things first. If somebody's dying of alcoholism and then they're looking at that and they're also wanting to suddenly jump into stopping smoking at the same moment, probably not a good idea to stop smoking at the same moment as you're in the midst of really addressing your alcohol problem that was going to kill you, or drugs or something like that. If you're struggling and managing to stay sober from opioids, maybe that moment is not the moment to stop sugar or to tackle that one. First things first. Triage.
There you go. Yes, exactly.
And the
And
5% rule, don't try to tackle an entire thing all at once. That is a huge thing. Just do what you can today.
mhm,
Once it becomes unmanageable and you don't do anything.
love it. Is there anything else you would like to add or touch on before we end today's podcast?
Just that, the Bible talks about children and woe to those who harm them, and how Jesus felt about the little ones. And so anything that we can do that helps children not fall into viewing substances as the way to function in life. God bless anyone that makes that effort. That's it.
I love that.